A lot of good things going on in Houston right now as we sit waiting for the national championship game with the Houston Cougars. The Rockets are cementing themselves as the legitimate 2 seed. And yet, I felt like we need to balance out the yin and the yang of things. So I brought you a mock draft that's going to anger many, 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 many of you. And yet, I feel like D'Amico would be getting what he wanted in this draft. We'd have to look into the war room and see if Nick Haley was upset at this pick, or perhaps, Caserio and D'Amico gave each other side eyes or whatever, because D'Amico, as we know, has wanted a defensive tackle for a long time. Eric Armstead they tried to trade for a couple years ago, and it just seems like either because of the way the draft lays out or what have you, it hasn't quite worked out that they've gotten a marquee defensive tackle. In Chad Reuter's mock draft, it was a 5-rounder, which featured multiple trades, so I don't even want to get into that in the first round. But he has the Texans taking Derrick Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. Interestingly, Walter Nolan, another guy that's been linked to the Texans, goes one spot after him to the Eagles. I'm okay with that. I think that Derrick Harmon might appeal to D'Amico a little bit more than Walter Nolan for various reasons that we'll get into. But the thing that was really going to anger a lot of you is the fact that just sitting out there like a tumbling meatball on the draft board would be one Matthew Golden, who goes to the Bills at pick 27. This is a case where I myself personally would be a little bit crestfallen. I've fallen in love with Matthew Golden. If he was available, I would be upset. A lot of Texans fans, whether you like Matthew Golden or Luther Burden or Isaiah Bond or anybody else, those guys are still on there, so there's still plenty of viable wide receivers. I think people might be upset with this. They might. I watch a couple plays of Derrick Harmon here, and I really do like the way he plays. Hold on a second, everybody. He's 6'4.5". He's 315 pounds. He's a good 20 pounds heavier and maybe a half-inch taller or so than Walter Nolan. But he's one of these guys that he doesn't excel athletically in any one aspect of the game, but he uses his hands really, really well. He penetrates into the backfield. He had 11 and a half TFLs this past year. The one point of concern about that is that he was at Michigan State before this year, and he didn't really produce anywhere near on the same level as he did at Oregon. I do think you see a lot of evidence of really good coaching here, and maybe it was as simple as, aside from playing next to a really good nose tackle, maybe he was coached up that much better. I haven't watched his Michigan State stuff. If the Texans drafted him, of course, I obviously would. But you see right there, he's got really, really active hands. He's also got a good sense for when to disengage. He uses his length well. I thought he was taller than 6'4.5" the first time I saw him play. Part of that is a little bit of what some of his negatives are. And I'll put just the weaknesses up that Lance had. Don't hate on Lance Zierlein. He has the positives listed above this, but Lance has a good way of naming some of the concerns. Carries bad weight on top-heavy frame with tightness in his hips. I think that's accurate. And the one, if you go down to the fourth one, his rush is linear with a lack of upper body turn to flip his edges. So he's not an incredibly dynamic athlete, but even in some of his highlights, you can kind of see where he's all or nothing, where he gets upfield and he'll just miss out on a lot of tackles. Like, he could have had even more tackles for a loss. That one wasn't a glaring concern or anything right there. You got to hit on the quarterback. But you'll see right here, uses his hands and sheds extremely well. Lance's comment about his body type, when you look at some of the still frames of him, is like, yeah, he's got a little bit of a muffin top going. And is that a concern? It doesn't look like he looks obese or anything. I think he might just not have the most glistening of body types. I really like the way he plays. I think this would be a good pick in a vacuum, but I think that a lot of people would be upset about them not going offense. And I don't know if he's a good enough prospect for me to displace good offensive candidates, especially a Matthew Golden. So I'll give this mock draft, I'll give it a B- by Chad Reuter. I like the player. I'm just not so convinced that he's a good enough defensive tackle. In a draft where I think you're going to be able to find some really good prospects in the second round at defensive tackle, I don't want to give up on the glistening possibility of an offensive player. Yeah. Hard pass on football, Hodor. Ah, crap. He's more athletic than Hodor. Look, Hodor wouldn't. He couldn't even play O-line. Hodor was as magnificent as he was. His foot speed and his agility was just absolutely atrocious. And who needs offense? Yeah, I'm with you, Tim. Sarcastically, we need offense. The Houston Texans, that's who. Make this a quick one today. I promised my wife a walk before a long night of sleep deprivation for me, watching first the Cougs and then West Coast baseball. Glory, hallelujah. Thanks for the AL West.